Blessings, good evening on this Tuesday evening. We have a few questions have come in, Dhamma questions, so we'll see what we can do to answer. So the question is, if A asks me something about B, but if I tell A the facts that I know about B, then that will get B into some serious trouble. Also, I have agreed to B that I will not tell anyone else. Then in this situation, what should I do? Not a lot of detail here to give any kind of detailed answer. These sort of questions when names are redacted and the situation is not fully explained, it's hard to know what the context of it is, but generally, if, say, A, this person A is your friend, your trusted friend, and if B is your trusted friend and A asks you about them, and if you answer directly, then that's going to get B, your trusted friend, into trouble. Then you might, out of friendship, be a bit careful what you say, and maybe you could say, well, that's something you should ask A yourself. It's not for me to say. Because you don't want to get your friend B in trouble. And if you've already agreed with this person B that you're not going to say about it, something from their past or some issue that could have serious consequences for them if other people know, it's private, maybe that's your priority, is to respect the privacy of person B. In person A, you have to ask yourself, well, do they really need to know? Do you need to be the one telling them about B's personal stuff? And so perhaps that's not your place, so you have to find a polite, diplomatic answer. And A can always ask B themselves, rather than you being the one telling them. If this makes sense, that's good. Sort of vaguely related, when the Lady Visakha got married, what was the teaching the Buddha gave was, don't take the fire from your household, your kitchen, outside, and don't bring other people's fire inside your household. Don't tell other people your problems and stuff. Don't gossip about your own family. You might cause unnecessary trouble for yourself and your family members, and you don't need to bring other people's trouble back into your home, into your family. You've already got to work out how to live with the family anyway, and then you bring in other people's problems in, it's going to make it harder. Or you could take it one step further and talk about your mind. You don't take your own suffering out of your own mind and spread it around to other people. You're taking it out on other people, telling everyone else all your suffering. And if other people are suffering, don't bring it into your mind and attach to it and identify with it and take ownership of it, because it will make you suffer. So probably the important thing is to be mindful of speech on these occasions, whether you're with A or B or anyone else, C, D, right down to Z. Try to be mindful of your speech and consider, think first, consider first and then speak, rather than speak first and then think about it later or regret what you've said later. Another question. Ajahn, do you know after one dies, Does one's good karma come first, or one's bad karma comes first, and why? It depends. No simple answer here. Good karma can ripen first, or bad karma can ripen first. You can read up on this, obviously, what the Buddha taught about karma. So, possibly what might ripen first, although this is not absolute, but possibly might be what we call heavy karma ripens first when someone dies, because it will have left such a big impression on their mind through their life that as they die, then it comes up really strongly. So heavy good karma could be somebody who's meditated a lot and attained states of samadhi regularly and have some skill in that, particularly jhana. Well, they might enter a state of jhana just before they die, and that would be a very wholesome state to die in. Or, of course, if someone's actually a noble one, then already they're experiencing the fruits of their good karma, and very little bad karma is likely to come up when they die. It'll just be good karma. But if somebody is still unenlightened, but they've attained samadhi, and that could be good karma that gives its result. So say, just as we chanted just now, for sublime abidings, say you developed the object of metta or karuna or mudita or upekkha to the level of jhana, then when you die, you could enter that jhana just before you die and be reborn as a Brahma god. And people do this, and they become Brahma gods based on these four sublime abidings. Heavy bad karma would be the worst, like the 5 Andarya karmas. So, killing your mother, killing your father, killing an arahant, causing a split in the sangha, a schism in the sangha, or trying to draw blood and hurt a Buddha. These are the worst kinds of karma people can make. And if one had made those during the course of one's life, then they may well come up at the end of one's life very strongly and almost unavoidably, dragging the mind into a very unwholesome state, maybe full of despair, regret, and maybe down into a hell realm, most likely. But if there's no heavy karma, then it could be habitual karma is a very prominent karma that will come up, habitual, good or bad. So if you habitually, say you're one who habitually gets angry, well, as you're dying, you may well get angry. You've been angry through your life, complaining about this, that, and the other, yourself, other people, the world. That becomes a very habitual way of thinking, and your mind intends with anger regularly, then it may well come up for you at the time of death. Maybe unfinished business with other people comes up in the form of ill will or even hatred, and you die with that. But you could have habitual good karma, so it could be someone who's generous regularly through their life, so they may have thoughts of generosity, or someone who's kept sila, they have a very virtuous mind, and they have the qualities of hiriyottappa, shame, conscience, and fear of wrongdoing, that may be present, or somebody who's meditated regularly, even if they haven't attained deep states of samadhi, but they could well meditate right up to the last moment when they're conscious, maintaining mindfulness on an object, calming their mind, keeping the mind in a wholesome state, and so on. Habitual karma, good and bad, is going to have there's a very high likelihood that will come up at the time of death. Sometimes it's more just whatever thought comes up and it could be good or bad. I mean, it may depend on preceding thoughts, so like habitual karma, but still there can be a certain spontaneity here and uncertainty, and you know, somebody may have a strong attachment just prompted at the last minute. You know, you say you're on your deathbed and you're quite calm and peaceful, but then somebody who once hurt your feelings walks into the room just before you die, and suddenly you remember all the things you hate about them, and that prompts all this unwholesome karma to come up unexpectedly. And similarly, it could be something good. So that's why Buddhists will chant for someone dying. They might chant themselves or put on a recording of monks or people chanting to help calm the person dying and help them think of something good, put them in a good, wholesome state of mind. Or listening to Dhamma is a very wholesome thing that can help someone when they're dying. So you might be lying in your deathbed and someone who knows you comes in and they turn on some Dhamma teaching for you unexpectedly, and then, the faith arises, the happiness arises. So there is a certain chance of spontaneity, of either craving and attachment arising right at the end, or very wholesome Dhammas. So there's a number of different factors. I think the simile is like cows in a pen. Say the farmer opens the gate of the pen, and you've got a herd of cows in there. Well, normally the leader of the herd leads them out, doesn't he? But say the leader of the pen, at the time that the farmer opens the gate, the leader is far away from the gate. So then maybe it's just the cow that's nearest the gate comes out. So karma can be like that. You may have your character and your habitual karma and the sort of leading karma you've made through your life, but then still it could be just the first thought that pops into your head as you're dying, and that could be good or bad. So all the more reason why we should practice the Dhamma to make our mind firm in wholesome karma, in wholesome Dhammas, make our faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha firm, our practice of sila firm, practice of mindfulness firm, and insight as firm as you can, because this will all be wholesome karma that can give its result as you're dying and support you into your next life. And monks, we have one legend story that we talk about. It's the monk in the time of the Buddha who was in the forest and meditating, and then a tiger came along and attacked him. But he was determined to meditate, not to fight. So he's meditating, he maintained his practice of vipassana as the tiger was attacking him. So the tiger laid into him and ate up to his knees, and he attained sotapanna, letting go of his body and attachment to his five khandhas on that level, the view of khandhas as self. So he attained sotapanna, stream enterer, stream winner. And the tiger carried on attacking him up to the waist, and he attained once returner, sakadagami. And then the tiger kept attacking him, ate him up to the chest, and he attained non-returner, anagami. And just before the monk was swallowed into the tiger, he attained arahant. So it's possible you could attain nibbana right on your deathbed. If you let go with wisdom, cultivate the factors of the path right at the end, you could attain nibbana. So another follow-up question, I think. To what extent does one's actions influence the process of rebirth, and to what extent is the process beyond one's control? Well, again, sort of, as I just explained, karma is a process of cause and result, action and result, action and consequence. So within that, there's still the reflection on not self. Yes. We are conditioned beings. Our states of mind that we experience, the fruits of our past karma arise dependently. So one thought is arising dependent on another previous thought. Feeling, we're constantly feeling pleasure, pain or neutral feeling. This is all the results of past karma coming up. And then you feel pleasure, that often triggers one reaction in the mind. It could be a wholesome thought accompanied by pleasurable feeling, but it could be greed and desire for more pleasure. Or painful feeling can stimulate aversion, ill will, for example. But every moment we're experiencing pleasure and pain or neutral feelings. So we're constantly experiencing past karma giving its results, and how we deal with that right up to the moment of death depends on our practice. So whether you can maintain a wholesome state of mind at the end of your life or not will depend largely on how you practice through your life. There may be some proximate causes and conditions which may stimulate karma, so one may be hearing the Dhamma or meeting a well-practiced Dhamma practitioner right on your deathbed, and they stimulate you to reflect on the Dhamma and let go. But it's still causes and conditions. So if you associate with well-practiced Dhammafarers, Kalyana Mitta, that's a really good cause for you receiving good inputs right through to the end of your life, and they may stimulate the arising of wholesome conditions. And then your own practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, cultivating that. And you can say, well, there's no self in all this, but still it's a process of cause and effect. And the Buddha didn't say, because there's no self, just give up. He said, there's no self, but you still make wholesome karma ultimately for liberating yourself from attachment and delusion, to do that which is most beneficial for yourself as a human being. You're talking on the conventional level. The Buddha did say, well, there's a self that needs to make good karma in order to go beyond karma and let go of self. So that's why we practice the Dhamma, and we practice or aim to practice right to the end of our life, and this will have an effect on what happens afterwards. But our aim, the best kind of karma, is the karma for the ending of karma, the karma that's aimed at Nibbana. So that's the Noble Eightfold Path, ending at the cessation of craving and attachment. So that implies you're not looking to control rebirth in the sense that would imply that you are following the process of attachment becoming with a sense of self, trying to direct this sense of self to be reborn somewhere. If you're really practicing what the Buddha taught, you're aiming for Nibbana, completely letting go. You might have to trust in that, but it will bring a good result, because if you're letting go of self, this is one of the highest insights you can have. Whether you're reborn in heaven realm or back as a human, well, this will depend on many, many causes and conditions that will depend on your karma. But in the final analysis, you may not be able to control that, and you probably shouldn't be trying to control that, because that would become a sense of self-attachment that actually might block you from a wholesome rebirth. If you're still caught into the round of rebirth, you haven't reached Nibbana yet. If you maintain a strong sense of self at the end, that's going to possibly cause you suffering and bring your mind down, as it were, into a state of suffering right at the end because of this strong attachment to self. So try to let go of everything, the material things, the people you know, your body, your thoughts, your feelings. Just as when we're meditating, we're practicing letting go. Letting go of self, The more you can do that to the end of your life, the better. Another question. The Buddha has said it would be hard for him to meet someone who had not been his mother, father, sister, brother, daughter or son in the course of that long, long time of rebirth from the past. Therefore, if every being has been our parent in the past, does that mean we cannot possibly repay them even when were we to carry them on our backs to care for them for the rest of our life? That's referring to a teaching from the Buddha that the debt that we owe our parents for giving us birth and bringing us into the world couldn't be repaid even if we carried them on our shoulders for the rest of our life. So the questioner is saying, somehow I cannot see the logic of this, please explain. So that's if everyone has been your parent in a past life, then you're just going to be weighed down by this burden of debt to all of them. Well, I think the Buddha is being very practical in the sense he's talking about this life, which is the most important one. Past lives are over, and you can't influence them anymore because they're finished. He encouraged us not to dwell in the past. Because he could recollect past lives, well, he could make this statement that we have been related to pretty much everyone we meet in this life. And that's particularly to give us a sense of the common, universal experience of birth, aging, sickness and death that we all have, and the fact that we've been related to others to help bring up the sense of kindness and compassion, to help us let go of ill will we may hold for others. Because if you see them like your relative, then you tend to forgive and let go easier, don't you? So it's a perception. And it may be true, but in terms of the debt to parents, I mean, that's this life. That's the reflection. This life is the most important one. So your parents in this life have given you birth, and whether you like them or not, or agree with them or not, that as truth has been established. So it's a very special relationship, and so we should do what we can to give something back, support our parents in their practice if they're still alive, to support them to have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, keep the precepts, meditate, do good, do acts of generosity. The more we can support them in that is the way we can give something back to them. And similarly, if we try to harm or hurt our parents, it's a very powerful negative karma, because they're the ones who gave us birth. Even if we don't agree with them, don't like them, should try not to harm them. Of course, if you develop the path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Eightfold Noble Path, you're developing kindness and compassion for all beings as part of that. So therefore, this question about who's been your mother and father in past lives, well, practically speaking, you can develop goodwill to all beings in all realms and all people you meet, strangers, friends, work colleagues, doesn't matter. We cultivate as much unconditional or limitless loving kindness and compassion as we can to remove the biases from our mind. We have the biases of I like this person, I don't like that person. But cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path for Nibbana, we're raising our mind above these biases. So part of that is done through cultivating unconditional loving kindness and compassion for others. So that pretty much covers it. If they have been your parent in a past life, or have compassion for them. You may not be able to remember that though, so it's not immediately the thing you need to be focusing on. Were you my parent last life? Just treat them well, whoever they are, I would say. But your parents this life, who you're sure who they are, well, of course, they're the most important ones. That relationship is the most important. Dear Luang Por, in the Majjhima Nikaya number 12, the Buddha described that there are 4 kinds of generation, birth, namely egg-born generation, womb-born generation, moisture-born generation, and spontaneous generation. In the spontaneous generation, apart from other beings, certain human beings are also mentioned here. What type of certain human beings is the Buddha referring to under this category? Thank you. Well, spontaneous beings born from spontaneous generation usually refers to those beings in realms other than the human and the animal realm. So those realms you can't see. So the heaven realms and Brahma realms, or the realms of woe, the ghost realms, demon realms, and hell realms. But I think there's one time the Buddha mentioned spontaneously generated human beings, and that's the first human beings who were generated from the Brahma realms and came down to be born in the human realm based on their desire to taste the very nutritious food on the surface of the world at that time. So that the power of that desire led to some spontaneous human birth. So how we describe that in terms of science, that's another question, but that's one class that was mentioned. And then I think there's 1 or 2 exceptions. Most human beings obviously are born in the womb, from the womb. But there was one lady, it was Ampapali, who was born in a mango tree, if I remember. If you read the sutras and also the commentaries and the Vinaya, there's always exceptions to things. And so one of the exceptions is, a human being who was spontaneously born. And even modern day science and biology is full of exceptions to various rules and laws. So perhaps you can, most people might be able to accept that, cope with that, a spontaneously born human. How you'd explain it in science, I don't know, but the fact that there could be an exception, well, let's just keep an open mind. But there was one lady, I think, if I remember, who was spontaneously born. Anyone remember that? No? You remember that one? Huh? I thought it was Ampabali. Spontaneously born. Anyway, the experts will have to go back to the books and read up on that, but as far as I know, there are those occasional spontaneously born human beings. So this is just a reminder of things like impermanence, uncertainty, also a reminder that the cosmos, the universe, is there are these different kinds of birth. There's egg-born generation, well, obviously birds and duck-billed platypus. If you live in Australia, you'll know them, and other insects and other kinds of animals are born from eggs. Womb-born generation, well, that's mammals and people like us. Moisture-born, I think it's all the kind of bacteria and kind of worms and things that grow in moisture, early life forms and so on. And then spontaneous, as I said, the heaven realms and the lower realms. So just keep an open mind to this. There's plenty of reading material out there if you want to find out more. But this explains, say, like, not the normal spontaneous birth is, say, of a deva or a ghost or a hell being, and the physical body dies, in the end somebody dies, a human dies, consciousness arises in its next form, which may be spontaneous birth in a heaven realm. They say it's still based on a tiny bit of materiality, rupa, but it's a subtle body that a human wouldn't normally see. Same for ghosts and so on. But then occasionally there's a crossover where a human does see a deva or a ghost, and so we get these sort of mysteries. Are there ghosts? Are there not? Are there angels, devas or not? We once had a dog at Wat Marpjan who used to see ghosts, so he'd stand there barking at thin air. And some of the monks whose meditation was good would say, he's seen another ghost. So he'd be standing there barking. He could see the ghost, but no one else could. Sometimes humans see ghosts, don't they? Sometimes they see devas. Sometimes it's because the deva wants the human to see, to arouse faith. Sometimes the human has developed samadhi and is more psychic, more sensitive. There are those people, so then they can see these beings who are spontaneously born in these realms with subtle bodies. The last question tonight: is saddha also part of sammaditthi? So saddha means confidence, faith, conviction. Sammaditthi means correct view or right view. So sammaditthi, the heart of sammaditthi is the wisdom faculty, panya. So sammaditthi is divided into lokiya or mundane right view, correct view. So listening to the Dhamma, absorbing it, and then having some faith or conviction that it's true. So faith in karma, the law of karma. There is such a thing as wholesome karma and unwholesome karma based on wholesome intention, unwholesome intention. There are such beings as enlightened Buddhas and enlightened Arahants. There is such a thing as the path, the Dhamma that will lead to the end of suffering. There is such a thing as making merit through acts of kindness, generosity. There are effective ways to develop the human mind, to cleanse the mind of greed, anger, and delusion. As we said earlier, that the relationship one has with parents is special because they give birth to one, should not be ignored, and so on. These are the sort of factors of mundane right view. And then there's super mundane or lokuttara right view, which when one develops the path and has deep insight realizes the Four Noble Truths, and actually this changes the view of the mind, and purifies the mind of greed, anger and delusion. So these, in effect, are based around wisdom, the wisdom faculty, the wisdom, what we call panya indriya, the wisdom faculty. The Buddha taught about a human being has 5 main spiritual faculties. So panya is at one end of the scale, sati is in the middle, samadhi, virya, effort. But the first is saddha, faith or conviction. So that's a faculty of mind. And it's balanced by wisdom, but it's not exactly the same thing, because it's conviction, and before one has full wisdom or insight, one may have conviction in the teachings, in the teacher, in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, but it may not in the beginning be balanced yet by wisdom. So one can obviously have faith in something that's not very wholesome or deluded. So it could be a teacher or a set of teachings that are not going to lead to liberation, or that is not pure or not wise. And unfortunately people do get faith and believe in something that is actually harmful for them. It happens every day. So the Buddha encouraged us to balance our saddha, faith faculty, with the wisdom faculty, and contemplate what you're putting your faith in And listening to the Dhamma, meeting good teachers, listening to the Dhamma will help you to develop the wisdom and the insight to manage your faith so you're not putting your faith in the wrong place. Say with a teacher, the Buddha said, develop faith over a long period of time. Get to know that teacher. Don't just listen to a few talks or hear their wise words, but look at them, get to know them, live with them to see whether they actually live and practice what they teach. Whether they live in a virtuous way, whether they're truthful, honest, and so on. You get to know them over time. And over time and as you practice yourself, your faith with the cultivation of wisdom and insight becomes unshakable or firm because it's now based with clear knowledge and vision of the way things are. So you might begin with faith in the Four Noble Truths as a really good teaching that makes sense, that seems to give you an explanation of the way suffering arises and how you can practice to end it. But in the beginning you're just taking that on faith. But then as you practice and verify and prove these teachings for yourself, your faith becomes established based on experience and true knowledge for yourself. So then your faith becomes unshakable. So it's one of the qualities of a stream winner. You have unshakable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha because they know for themselves that this works. The practice works for changing an unenlightened mind to one that is free from suffering, free from the causes of suffering, greed, anger, and delusion. So the faith is based on personal experience and wisdom, insight. So they're both essential faculties for progress along the Buddhist path towards Nibbana, but they're two sides of the practice. They're not exactly the same. So those are the questions tonight. I hope the answers were useful. If they weren't, then we can always carry on studying and practicing, and the answers will become clearer, hopefully, for all of us. So we'll leave you with those reflections tonight.